Today we are going to analyze a poem called Owusu. So if you want the full analysis, the gist and the whole details to the poem Owusu, stay to the end of this video. Now before we go on into the main analysis, before we move on into the main poem, I want us to look at the background to this whole poem. After that, we are going to do the full analysis. So stay tuned. Okay, so let's look at the background of this poem. Now, first of all, the writer of this poem is basically unknown, but what we know or what sources are telling us is that Owusu was actually an education officer who died in a car accident in 1952, and this poem was a form of adoration, was a form of mourning. So during Owusu's funeral, Owusu's former landlady made some pronouncements, made some lamentations, made some praises to Owusu. So the writer actually wrote the lamentations, the mourning, the crying, and everything down, and then it actually became a dirge or an African dirge, which we refer to as Owusu today. In this poem, you will see how she mourns him, the kind of affection and adoration that she gives to Owusu. Before we move on to the main analysis of this poem, let's first read the whole poem and get a gist of the poem. Valiant Owusu, the stranger on whom the citizen of the town depends. Father, allow my children and me to depend on you, so that we may all of us get something to eat. Father, on whom I wholly confer. When Father sees me, he will hardly recognize me. He will meet me carrying an old torn mat and a horde of flies. Father, with whom I confer, my children and I will look to you. Father, on whom I wholly depend. Killer of hunger, my saviour. Father, the slender arm full of kindness. Father, the rover whose footprints are on all paths. Alright, so this is the whole gist of the poem. Alright, so what I like to do with poems is that I like to take it one after the other. That means I take every line and then I try to make meaning out of the poem. So without much ado, let's take it one line after the other. So in the first line, we have Valiant Owusu. Valiant Owusu. Let's talk about the word valiant. Valiant is actually a word which talks about courage. Okay, it's a word which means boldness. It means brave. Okay, so when we talk about valiant, so we can say something like courageous Owusu. Courageous Owusu. Okay, so valiant is used to signify strength. Alright, so let's look at the name Owusu itself. Owusu is an African Akan name. Let me put it that way, okay? It is a Ghanaian name, specifically an Akan name. And coincidentally, Owusu also means, or the name Owusu means somebody who is strong-willed, okay, and who is determined. If you go to the Akan setting, the Akan culture, the name Owusu signifies determination, and then somebody who is strong willed. Okay, so let's move on to the next line. It says that the stranger on whom the citizen of the town depends. The stranger. Now, a stranger is somebody that we wouldn't consider to depend on, but Owusu is someone that this woman actually think that she can depend on because of maybe what he did or the works that he performed in the town. And she was not talking about one person, she was talking about a whole town. Okay, so I'm assuming that Owusu is somebody who was famous, because if the whole town knows you and the town is depending on you, then probably you are someone that a lot of people actually know. And being someone who is dependable, when we say that we depend on you, it means that you are responsible. Okay, that's my thought on it. So my thought on this is that Owusu is somebody that this woman could really depend on because he was responsible. He rose to the occasion. When he was needed, he didn't lack or anything. He was able to give out his all, and because of that, he became someone that this woman looked up to. Let's move on to the next line. He says that, Father, allow my children and me to depend on you. And I'm more interested in the word Father. I'm more interested in the word Father. A father to me is a provider. So Owusu was more or less a provider here. And a father is also a stronghold. Okay, a stronghold. And fathers, I would say that symbolizes, courage. Symbolizes courage. And I see to it that, or I'm seeing here that this woman found Owusu to be her rock. Okay, and when I say her rock, it means that the woman actually could rely on Owusu. She found some form of reliance, and she looked at Owusu as somebody that she could really go to, she could run to when things get very difficult. It says that, so that we may all of us get something to eat. So that we may all of us get something to eat. So this line is also trying to talk about being a provider. That's Owusu. Okay, like we talked about in the other lines. Okay, so this stanza is basically talking about Owusu being someone that they can rely on. He's a provider. He gives them what they need, and also even when they want food, Owusu is also somebody that can provide such kind of service. I want us to look again at the word Father. Now, Father has become repetitive, all right, in this poem. So it says that, on whom I wholly depend. When we say that you wholly depend on someone, it means that you depend on him for everything. Okay, you depend on him for everything. And I don't know about you, but my thoughts on this one is a little bit of an exaggeration, because I don't think this woman wholly depended on Owusu, even though Owusu was somebody that this woman could really depend on. I don't think that Owusu, or she and her children wholly depended on Owusu. So I would look at some form of a literary device here. I think that the woman is exaggerating a bit here. So I would go for something like a hyperbole. All right, so let's move on to the next line. When Father sees me, he will hardly recognize me. So the word Father is being repeated again. He says that when Father sees her, he will hardly recognize her. Now, in this line, we can see that she still believes, even though Owusu is dead and gone, she still believes that she would be able to meet Owusu again, okay? Probably in the afterlife. And this is a way of expressing our culture, African culture, and our Ghanaian culture. You know, in many of our Ghanaian societies, we actually believe that there is an afterlife. And when we die, we go and join our ancestors. And if you were a very good person on earth, if you go and then you join your ancestors, you will be treated well. So that kind of belief is also there. And this woman still, even though she's still alive and Owusu is dead, she believed that one day in the afterlife she would be able to meet Owusu once again. The next line says that he will meet me carrying an old torn mat and a horde of flies. Now, this part really gives out strong images. Okay, this line gives out strong images. Now let's look at the first image. It says that old torn mat. Old torn mat. So when we say that something is old, okay, and then we are also talking about torn. So when it's old and it's torn, it is actually trying to bring about a certain form of image. And I see an image of hardship. All right, hardship. Because if you are not passing through it in life, or if you're not going through it, you know, you're not having difficulty in life, you wouldn't be holding an old torn what? Mat. I also see something like poverty, and then I see something like lack, right, or insufficiency. So all of these goes with old torn mats, okay? And then the second image, very strong image, all right? He says that a horde of flies, a horde of flies. Now, when we talk about horde, the word horde means something like a group. Okay, so a group of flies. And flies, when we talk about group of flies, we are talking about something that is like disgusting. Okay, something that is not pleasant to the eye. So two images here. It says that an old torn mat and a horde of flies. I'm also sensing the horde of flies to be something like disgrace. All right, disgrace, because she doesn't have, she lacks, and because of that she has flies following her around. Okay, so we are talking about disgust, we are talking about disgrace, we are talking about poverty, we are talking about insufficiency, we are talking about penury. So this poem or this line talks a lot about being poor. Okay, being poor because of the absence of Owusu. The next line says that Father with whom I confer, Father with whom I confer. So when we say that you confer, All right, you confer with somebody. Probably, if you want to make a decision, you go to the person, and then before you make that final decision, okay. So if you want to make any form of decision, any kind of decision, you move on to the person and before you make that kind of decision. So she can totally confer in Owusu because she trusts him. If you don't trust somebody, you won't think about asking him or taking his thoughts on something that you want to do. It is only when you trust an individual, it's only when you trust someone that you can fully understand and you can fully open up, be vulnerable, and tell the person what is actually going on or what you want to do. All right, so let's move on to the third stanza. And the third stanza starts off heavily. It says that, killer of hunger, my savior. Killer of hunger, my savior. Now, when we talk about killer of hunger, I see something that has been personified. I see that hunger has been personified because hunger doesn't possess that characteristics of being able to be killed. Okay, so the character of a person has been given to hunger. Now, if hunger can be killed, then we can say that hunger has been personified. So, in my opinion, I see hunger to be killer of hunger to be a personified statement. And then we have my savior. All right, my savior. Now, when we talk about a savior is somebody who rescues. Okay, a savior is somebody who rescues. Talk about being in danger, finding yourself in trouble and then getting help, at the last minute when you didn't even know that you were going to get help. That person is your savior. Okay, so Owusu is more of a rescuer to this woman. All right, so let's go to the next one. It says, Father, the slender arm full of kindness. Okay, so the slender arm circled, the slender arm. The slender arm is referring back to Owusu. Okay, the slender arm is a reference to Owusu. All right, Father, the slender arm. So she's trying to say that Owusu is full of what? Kindness. But she's using part of Owusu, which is Owusu's arm. Okay, Owusu's slender what? Arm. Full of kindness. And when a part is used to show a whole, we have a literary device for that situation. And then it is called synecdoche. That literary device is called synecdoche. Okay. So let's move on to the last part. It says that Father. So let's look at the word Father here. You see, Father has been repeated and it has been used metaphorically. Okay, it has been used metaphorically. And Father, the rover whose footprints are on all paths. I repeat the last line. It says that Father, the rover whose footprints are on all paths. Now, when we talk about rover, okay, if we search for the word rover, rover is talks about something which is not static. Okay, something which is constantly moving. All right, it is moving from one place to the other. That means that you cannot confine it. Okay, that's the word rover. Okay, whose footprints are on all paths. So she's trying to say that Owusu doesn't keep to his comfort zone. Owusu tries to move from one place to the other. Owusu goes about spreading kindness. Owusu spreads his wings and goes around. He doesn't hide in a corner, or he doesn't hide in the dark. He comes to the light. All right. So whose footprints are on all paths? So Owusu goes to different areas, different places. Owusu is all around. When I look at this poem again, I also see that Owusu is on all paths. Okay, Owusu is on all paths, of which I think is an exaggeration. Yes, it's an exaggeration, because Owusu is just human. He cannot be on all paths. Owusu can be in, some paths, maybe more paths, but his footprints cannot be in all paths. So that's the reason why I think that in this line, hyperbole should be mostly dominant. Thank you very much for staying with me to the end of this video. If you like what I do, click the like button, comment, and then subscribe. I will catch you later. Goodbye.